Jack Turner was having a perfectly mediocre Thursday afternoon, which in his book counted as a win. The rain tapped a gentle rhythm on the corrugated metal roof of his garage, and the ancient radio sputtered out a classic rock station between bursts of static. His hands were deep in the guts of Mrs. Henderson's '87 Buick, a vehicle that, like its owner, refused to acknowledge its own mortality. "Come on, you obstinate pile of bolts," Jack muttered, twisting a wrench with more force than finesse. "I know you've got at least another decade of spite left in you." The phone rang with its characteristic shriek, somehow audible even over Aerosmith's greatest hits. Jack sighed, wiped his hands on a rag that might have been white during the Clinton administration, and trudged over to the ancient landline. Nobody who called the landline ever brought good news. "Turner's Auto," he growled into the receiver. "If it moves and it shouldn't, or doesn't move and it should, we fix it." There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice that sounded like it was being filtered through a tin can full of marbles said, "Hello, yes, greetings, human mechanic establishment. I am requiring immediate assistance with a, traditional Earth vehicle that has ceased its operational functions." Jack pinched the bridge of his nose. "Look, buddy, if you're trying to do an impression of someone who's never seen a car before, you're nailing it. What's the actual problem?" Another pause. "The conveyance device is not conveying. It is in the forest, north side, by the big pointy trees." "You mean pines?" "Yes, exactly, the pine forest. Your Earth knowledge is impressive." Jack checked his watch. It was 4:30, and he'd been planning to close up at 5 o'clock. "Look, I don't normally do house calls, especially not to the forest with the pointy trees. Tow it in tomorrow. I will compensate you most generously. 5,000 of your dollars." Jack nearly dropped the phone. $5,000? To look at a car in the woods? Is this insufficient? 10,000. Whoa, hold on there, Rockefeller. 5,000 is fine. Jack's mind raced. Sure, the caller sounded like he was auditioning for the role of obvious scammer, but on the off chance this was legitimate, that kind of money would cover 3 months of rent and parts for his own project car. "Give me directions, actual directions, not follow the pointy trees, and I'll head out within the hour." After receiving surprisingly coherent directions to a logging road about 20 minutes outside of town, Jack hung up and stared at the phone as if it might explain the bizarre conversation. "Well," he announced to Mrs. Henderson's Buick, "either I'm about to make 5 grand, or I'm about to become the opening scene of a true crime documentary. Place your bets." Jack grabbed his portable toolkit, locked up the garage, and climbed into his tow truck, a hulking beast of a Ford, that, like everything else Jack owned, was held together by equal parts mechanical genius and stubborn refusal to die. He pulled out of the lot, flipping the sign to closed, with a casual flick of his wrist. As the truck rumbled down Main Street, past Darlene's Diner, and the town's single traffic light, Jack wondered what kind of car could possibly be worth a $5,000 house call. Maybe some rich tourist with a Ferrari had taken a wrong turn and hydro-locked their engine in a puddle. The image made him smile. Rich people and their fancy cars always assumed technology could overcome stupidity. In Jack's professional experience, stupidity always found a way. The logging road was barely more than a dirt track cutting through dense Maine woodland. Jack's truck bounced and shuddered over ruts and rocks, each impact accompanied by a colorful expletive. 10 grand, he reminded himself, after a particularly violent jolt, nearly separated his spine. 10 grand, 10 grand, 10 grand. As the trees grew denser and the road narrower, Jack's internal alarm bells began to ring louder. This was exactly the kind of place you'd lure someone if you wanted to murder them, and have their body not found until moose hunting season. Jack had lived in Pinewood his entire life, and he'd never heard of anyone with exotic car money residing within 50 miles. "If I get murdered," he announced to no one in particular, "I want it noted that I was fully aware this was a bad idea, and I did it anyway. For 10 grand. The truck rounded a final bend, and Jack slammed on the brakes so hard his toolbox slid forward, and slammed into the dashboard. What in the name of Henry Ford's ghost is that? There, in a small clearing, was what Jack could only describe as the most confused-looking vehicle he'd ever seen. It was roughly the size and shape of a minivan that had been designed by someone who'd only had minivans described to them by a drunk person. The exterior was a metallic purple that seemed to shift and shimmer in the dappled forest light. Instead of wheels, it hovered about 3 feet off the ground, and where a grille should have been, there was what looked suspiciously like a series of glowing blue vents. "That," Jack said with absolute certainty, "is not a Chevy." A figure emerged from behind the hovering whatever it was, waving enthusiastically. The person was tall and thin, wearing what appeared to be a trench coat, a fedora pulled low, and sunglasses despite the overcast day. As they approached, Jack noticed a distinct purple hue to what little skin was visible. Greetings, Earth Car Doctor. I am normal human person Vex'lor. I mean Vincent Lexington. Thank you for coming to this completely normal forest meeting. Jack leaned against his truck, arms crossed. Buddy, I don't know what you're selling, but I'm not buying. Is this some kind of prank show? Where are the cameras? Cameras, no cameras, just normal human vehicle malfunction situation. Vincent, or whatever his name was, gestured wildly toward the hovering contraption. My Earth car has stopped Earth carring. I require your legendary skills. Jack squinted at the man. There was something distinctly off about him, beyond the theatrical manner of speaking. For one thing, he appeared to have 3 fingers on each hand. For another, what Jack had initially taken for a scarf, was moving slightly, like gills. Now, Jack Turner considered himself a practical man. He didn't go in for conspiracy theories, or science fiction, but he also wasn't stupid. After 35 years on this planet, he knew when something wasn't adding up. All right, Jack said slowly. Let's cut the crap. That's not a car, you're not a Vincent, and I'm guessing you're not from around here. Like really not from around here. The figure deflated slightly, shoulders slumping. He reached up and removed the sunglasses, revealing eyes that were entirely orange with vertical pupils, like a cat's. Is it the voice? I practiced the voice extensively. It's everything, pal. Everything about you screams alien trying to pass as human and failing spectacularly. Your species is more perceptive than our research indicated. The alien removed the fedora, revealing a smooth bald head with faint ridges. I am indeed Vex'lor, 7th technical assistant to His Luminous Magnificence, Emperor Zorn'thal the Benevolent, ruler of the 17 Concordant Galaxies. Jack blinked slowly. And I'm the Queen of England. Really? Our records indicate your monarch is a male named Charles. This is most interesting. Your species can change both gender and nationality at will. Vex'lor pulled out a small device, and began tapping at it excitedly. No, it was, never mind. Jack rubbed his temples. I was being sarcastic. Ah, the famous Earth humor displacement, saying things that are not true for amusing effect. I have studied this extensively. Vex'lor made a sound that might have been an attempt at laughter, but sounded more like a garbage disposal with a spoon in it. Jack took a deep breath. He prided himself on being unflappable, and he wasn't about to let the existence of aliens change that. Okay, look, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want straight answers. First, is that your spaceship? It is not my personal vessel. No, it belongs to His Luminous Magnificence. I am merely a technician assigned to his travel fleet. And it's broken down? Correct. It has ceased all propulsion functions, and is now merely hovering in place. The emergency anti-gravity system remains operational, thankfully, or we would be, as you Earth people say, up poop creek without rowing implementation. Up shit creek without a paddle, Jack corrected automatically. And why call me? Don't you have I don't know, space mechanics or something? Vex'lor's face did something complicated, the ridges on his head flushing a deeper purple. Well, you see, this particular vessel was not supposed to be on this planet. His Luminous Magnificence decided to make an unscheduled detour for personal recreational purposes. He took a joyride, a most accurate Earth term. Yes, a joyride, and we cannot contact our fleet for assistance without revealing our unauthorized presence here. Jack stared at the alien, then at the ship, then back at the alien. So let me get this straight. Your Space Emperor took his fancy space car for a spin, crashed it in the Maine woods, and now you're trying to get it fixed on the down low. Precisely. Vex'lor clapped his 3-fingered hands together. You comprehend the situation perfectly, and you called me because your establishment was the highest-rated mechanical repair facility, within reasonable distance of our landing site. You have 27 5-star reviews on your Google business profile. Jack made a mental note to thank Mrs. Henderson for her persistent online enthusiasm about his services. All right, I'll take a look. But I doubled my fee, 20,000. Currency is no obstacle, Vex'lor assured him, pulling out what looked like a small crystal. This contains enough raw energy to power your entire state for approximately 1 of your Earth weeks. It can be easily converted to your primitive monetary system. Jack pocketed the crystal without comment. He'd figure out how to cash in an alien energy crystal later. Right now, he had a job to do. He grabbed his toolbox from the truck and approached the hovering vehicle. So what happened right before it stopped working? Any unusual noises, smells, or I don't know, interdimensional disturbances? Vex'lor hurried alongside him. His luminous magnificence was testing the vehicle's maximum atmospheric velocity parameters when we heard a loud thunk from the rear propulsion chamber, followed by what your species might describe as the smell of burning hair and despair. That's surprisingly relatable, Jack admitted. He circled the ship, which continued to hover serenely. How do I get inside to check the engine, or whatever you call the thing that makes it go? Before Vex'lor could answer, a panel on the side of the craft slid open with a soft hiss, and another alien emerged. This one was shorter, rounder, and a pale blue color. It wore what appeared to be an outfit made entirely of shifting geometric patterns that hurt Jack's eyes if he looked directly at them. Vex'lor, is this the primitive you summoned for assistance? Does it possess the necessary skills? The Emperor grows impatient. His relaxation chamber is overheating without proper power distribution. The blue alien's voice was high and reedy, with a perpetual note of panic.
Yes, Plib. This is Jack Turner, Earth's most renowned vehicle restoration specialist, Vex'lor said smoothly, shooting Jack a pleading look. Plib turned to Jack, blinking rapidly with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern around a small beak-like mouth. Human, His luminous magnificence has been trapped in this forest for nearly 3 of your Earth hours. This is a diplomatic catastrophe of the highest order. Fix our vessel immediately. Jack slung his toolbox over his shoulder, and gave the panicky alien his best customer service smile, the one that showed teeth but no warmth. Well, Plib, was it? I'll need to see what I'm working with first. So unless you want me to start randomly hitting parts of your boss's fancy space car with a wrench, I suggest you show me to the engine room. Plib made a sound like a deflating balloon. Very well, follow me, Earth mechanic. But touch nothing without permission. Some components could obliterate your molecular structure if improperly handled. Story of my life, Jack muttered, ducking to enter the alien craft. Story of my goddamn life. The interior of the spacecraft was nothing like Jack had imagined alien technology would look. He'd expected sleek, minimalist design with incomprehensible displays and maybe some floating holograms. Instead, it looked like someone had taken the inside of a luxury yacht, a 1970s disco, and a medical laboratory, thrown them in a blender, and arranged the results in a vaguely functional pattern. This is your propulsion control hub, Plib explained, gesturing to what looked like a wall of glowing jellyfish tentacles connected to pulsating purple orbs. The primary quantum flux capacitors interface with the dimensional slip regulators through these neural mimic connectors. Jack nodded sagely, understanding exactly none of that. Right, and where's the part that makes the funk noise? Vex'lor pointed to a large cylindrical chamber at the rear of the room, the temporal displacement drive. It's what allows us to move through your planet's atmosphere without creating sonic disturbances or leaving plasma trails. Jack approached the cylinder, which was emitting a faint whining noise, like a dog whistle at the very edge of human hearing. He tapped it with his wrench, and the whine shifted pitch slightly. Interesting, he murmured, more to himself than to the increasingly nervous aliens. He knelt down and examined the base of the cylinder, where several thick cables connected it to the floor. One of the connections was discolored, with what appeared to be some kind of iridescent fluid leaking from it. I'm guessing this isn't supposed to be leaking, whatever this is. Plib made a horrified squeaking sound. The chronoplasmic coolant. It's breached containment. We're doomed. We're not doomed, Jack said calmly, pulling a small flashlight from his pocket and shining it around the connection point. It's just a leak. Looks like the housing cracked when your boss was pushing the ship too hard. He pointed to a hairline fracture running along the base of the cylinder. See that? Metal fatigue. Happens all the time with people who drive their cars like they're in a NASCAR race. Vex'lor peered at the crack. But our alloys are designed to withstand the gravitational forces of a collapsing neutron star. How could atmospheric acceleration cause such damage? Jack shrugged. Everything breaks eventually, especially if it's not maintained properly. He ran his fingers along the edge of the fracture. When's the last time you changed the filters on this thing? The aliens exchanged a confused look. Filters? Plib asked. Yeah, filters. You know, the things that keep gunk from building up in your system. Jack pointed to several small honeycomb-like structures near the coolant lines that were clogged with a substance that looked disturbingly like crystallized mucus. These are completely shot. Your coolant's probably been running hot for months. No wonder the housing cracked under pressure. Vex'lor's orange eyes widened. But the ship's auto-maintenance protocols should have addressed any such buildup. Should have maybe. Did they? Jack raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, your boss likes to override safety protocols when they slow him down. The guilty silence was all the confirmation Jack needed. Thought so. He rummaged in his toolbox and pulled out a small scraper and some rags. I can clean these out manually, but you'll need to replace them soon. As for the crack, he examined it again, considering, I could weld it, but I don't know how your alien metal would react to Earth welding equipment. Just then, a new voice boomed from the doorway behind them. Why has my vessel not been repaired? I grow wary of this primitive forest. Jack turned to see what could only be Emperor Zorn'thal himself. The alien ruler was tall, at least 7 feet, with the same purple skin tone as Vex'lor, but with elaborate ridge patterns that formed what looked like a natural crown on his bald head. He wore robes that seemed to be made of living light, shifting and flowing around his imposing frame. Most notably, he had 4 arms, each ending in elegant, 6-fingered hands adorned with glowing rings. Plib immediately prostrated himself on the floor. Vex'lor bowed deeply. Jack gave a casual nod. Working on it, he said, turning back to the damaged cylinder. You've got a cracked coolant housing and clogged filters, probably from driving too hard and skipping maintenance. There was a shocked silence. Jack glanced back to see all 3 aliens staring at him with expressions that ranged from horror Plib to fascination Vex'lor, to outraged disbelief. The Emperor, do you know who I am, Earth creature? The Emperor thundered. Yep, you're the guy who broke his fancy space car and needs me to fix it. Jack pulled a roll of duct tape from his toolbox. So unless you want to wait for AAA to develop interplanetary towing services, I suggest you let me work. The Emperor's 4 arms made simultaneous gestures of what Jack assumed was alien indignation. Insolence. I could vaporize you with a mere thought. Sure, but then who'd fix your ship? Jack pointed out reasonably. He tore off a length of duct tape and began carefully applying it over the crack, smoothing it down with practiced fingers. Besides, vaporizing the locals tends to attract attention. Probably not great when you're here on an unauthorized joyride. Vex'lor made a choking sound that might have been suppressed laughter. The Emperor's rage seemed to deflate slightly. Your primitive repair materials cannot possibly withstand the quantum pressures of our drive system, he said, though with notably less volume. Watch and learn, your luminousness, Jack replied, continuing to layer the duct tape in a precise pattern. This stuff held together the International Space Station. It'll handle your coolant leak just fine, until you can get proper repairs. The International Space Station? Vex'lor asked, intrigued. Your orbital habitat. Our records indicate it was constructed with advanced aerospace-grade material. Sure was, Jack agreed. And when those fancy materials failed, the astronauts fixed them with duct tape. NASA sends rolls of this stuff on every mission. This wasn't entirely accurate, but Jack figured a little Earth mythology wouldn't hurt his credibility at this moment. He finished applying the tape, then moved on to the clogged filters. Using his scraper, he carefully removed the crystallized gunk, occasionally pausing to examine particularly interesting formations before flicking them onto the floor. Your filter system's actually pretty similar to an Earth car's, he commented as he worked. Different materials, obviously, but same basic principle. Stuff flows through, crud gets caught, eventually crud builds up too much and restricts flow. He held up a particularly large chunk of crystallized material. What is this stuff anyway? Looks like someone sneezed diamonds. Accumulated chronoplasmic particulate matter, Vex'lor explained, now watching Jack's work with undisguised interest. As the temporal field interacts with physical matter during atmospheric transit, it creates a crystalline residue. Time boogers. Got it. Jack nodded, continuing to clean. He worked methodically, his large, calloused hands surprisingly delicate as they navigated the alien machinery. The Emperor had apparently grown tired of being ignored and moved closer, his robes of light sending prismatic patterns across the walls. Your methods are unorthodox, human. That's one way of putting it. Jack grinned as he removed the last of the crystallized residue from the filters. In the trade, we call it getting the job done. Now let's see if my fix holds. He stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. Go ahead and try to start it up. Gently. Vex'lor moved to what Jack assumed was a control panel, and placed his 3-fingered hand on a pulsating orb. The ship hummed to life, the cylinder beginning to glow with a soft blue light. The whining noise Jack had noticed earlier faded, replaced by a pleasant thrumming sound. Temporal displacement drive engaging at minimal power, Vex'lor reported, sounding surprised. Chronoplasmic coolant flow stabilized. Filter efficiency restored to 87%. Best I could do with a hand scraper, Jack said with a shrug. You'll want to replace those entirely when you get back to wherever you're from. Plib, who had remained prostrate throughout the repair process, finally raised his head. It is working. The primitive fixed our quantum drive with adhesive strips and manual scraping. Duct tape and elbow grease, Jack corrected. Oldest repair combo in the book. The Emperor stared at Jack, all four of his arms crossed over his chest. You have accomplished in minutes what our finest technicians often require specialized equipment and hours to complete. Yeah, well, when you work with junk cars in rural Maine you learn to improvise. Jack began packing up his tools. That tape job should hold for a while, but don't push it. No more joyrides at maximum speed, at least until you get proper repairs. As he closed his toolbox, Jack noticed all three aliens were still staring at him with expressions he couldn't quite read. What? He asked. Did I miss something? The Emperor's ridged brow furrowed. Human Jack Turner, I believe there has been a significant miscalculation in our understanding of your species. Miscalculation, Jack echoed, closing his toolbox with a snap. What's that supposed to mean? The Emperor gestured expansively with his four arms, his robes of light shimmering with the movement. We have monitored your planet for centuries, categorizing your species as technologically developing, but fundamentally limited. Yet here you stand, having repaired quantum technology with— He gestured distastefully at Jack's toolbox, primitive implements and sticky fabric. Jack shrugged. Sometimes the simple solution works best. I once fixed a Maserati with a paperclip and chewing gum. He paused. Though to be fair, that was just to get it to the shop. Vex'lor approached a console and began tapping at a series of floating symbols. Your luminous magnificence, I am conducting a comprehensive diagnostic. The human's repairs appear to be holding at current's loads, but I recommend— A loud bang from somewhere deep in the ship interrupted him, followed by a shower of sparks from an overhead panel, and a sudden drop in the pleasant humming noise. Oh, that's not good, Jack muttered, automatically ducking as more sparks rained down. Plib let out a high-pitched wail. Secondary power coupling failure. The temporal matrix is destabilizing. The Emperor rounded on Jack, his natural crown flaring with what appeared to be actual electricity. You said you fixed it.
I fixed the coolant leak, Jack corrected, already reopening his toolbox. I never claimed to be a certified alien spaceship mechanic. What's a temporal matrix? Vex'lor, to his credit, remained calm. It's the system that allows the ship to maintain its position relative to spacetime while the drive is engaged. If it fails completely, we could be thrown into temporal flux. Meaning, the Emperor growled, we could be scattered across your planet's timeline like cosmic confetti. Right. Jack nodded as if being scattered across time was a common automotive issue. So we need to stabilize this matrix thing. Where is it? Vex'lor led Jack through a narrow corridor to a chamber dominated by what looked like a giant gyroscope made of light, spinning within a transparent cube. The gyroscope was wobbling erratically, and parts of it kept flickering in and out of visibility. This is the temporal matrix core, Vex'lor explained, gesturing to the unstable gyroscope. The coolant leak damaged the power relay, and now it can't maintain dimensional cohesion. Jack studied the device, scratching his stubbled chin. So it's like an alternator problem. The engine's running, but it can't power the electrical systems properly. That is, a vast oversimplification, but not entirely inaccurate, Vex'lor conceded. Jack circled the matrix core, his eyes narrowed in concentration. What kind of power does this thing run on? Quantum energy harvested from microscopic singularities, Plib supplied, having followed them into the chamber. The relay converts it to usable power through a series of dimensional filters and English. Please, Jack interrupted. Or whatever alien language translated into simple concepts I can work with. Vex'lor thought for a moment. It's like your electricity, but instead of flowing through wires, it flows through specialized conduits that can handle quantum fluctuations. And these conduits are damaged. Correct. The overheated coolant corroded the shielding, exposing the raw quantum flow to normal spacetime. Jack nodded slowly. So we need to insulate these conduits until your quantum juice can flow properly again. He dug into his toolbox and pulled out a roll of electrical tape, a small can of WD-40, and several rubber hose clamps. The aliens watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as Jack began spraying the lubricant around the base of the matrix core. What are you doing? Plib squeaked, his four eyes bulging even further than their natural protuberance. Lubricating the connection points, Jack explained, as if it were obvious. If your quantum whatever is having trouble flowing, might as well make the path as smooth as possible, but that is primitive petroleum distillate. Plib protested. It could work, Vex'lor interrupted, watching as the matrix's wobbling did indeed seem to decrease slightly. Fascinating. The hydrocarbon mixture is creating a temporary buffer zone between the quantum field and normal spacetime, Jack grinned. WD-40 and duct tape, the universal constants. Now for the real fix. He began carefully wrapping electrical tape around several glowing tubes that connected to the matrix core. These look like they're carrying your quantum power, right? The insulation's shot. Those are fourth-dimensional quantum conduits crafted from materials that don't technically exist in your reality, the Emperor said, having joined them in the chamber. Your crude petroleum tape cannot possibly there. Jack secured the last piece of electrical tape and stepped back. Try it now. Vex'lor returned to a nearby console and cautiously adjusted several controls. The gyroscope's wobbling decreased further, and its flickering stabilized into a steady pulsating glow. Temporal matrix stabilizing, Vex'lor reported, his voice tinged with disbelief. Quantum flow restoring to nominal parameters. It's actually working, Jack nodded, satisfied. Electrical tape. Good up to 600 volts on Earth. Apparently also good for fourth-dimensional quantum whatever. The Emperor stared at Jack, then at the now stable matrix core, then back at Jack. This defies all logic. Welcome to Earth repairs, Jack said with a grin. We make do with what we've got. He turned to Vex'lor. Let's check the primary drive again, make sure everything's playing nice together. They returned to the propulsion room, where Jack made a few additional adjustments, tightening his duct tape patch, adding a small brace made from a screwdriver handle, and more tape to support a wobbling component, and in what made Plib nearly faint, pouring a small amount of WD-40 directly into an intake port that Vex'lor identified as chronically friction-prone. All right, Jack said finally, closing his toolbox once more. That should do it. She's not pretty, but she'll fly. Vex'lor ran a final diagnostic, his expression growing increasingly amazed. All systems functional, temporal displacement drive at 92% efficiency, matrix stability at 89%, coolant flow fully restored. He turned to Jack with what appeared to be the alien equivalent of a grin. Your primitive methods have successfully repaired our advanced quantum technology. Yeah, well, I've been fixing things people said couldn't be fixed my whole life, Jack replied, trying not to sound too smug and failing completely. Now about my payment. The Emperor had been unusually quiet, watching Jack work with an intense gaze. Now he stepped forward, his robes of light dimming to a more contemplative glow. Human Jack Turner, he said, his voice surprisingly normal in volume, you have rendered a service to the 17 Concordant Galaxies this day, though they will never know it. Had this vessel been stranded, the resulting search would have revealed Earth's existence to the galactic community centuries before your scheduled first contact. Scheduled first contact, Jack repeated. You guys have us on a calendar or something. Of course, the Emperor replied, as if it were obvious. All developing worlds are monitored and contacted when they reach an appropriate technological threshold. Your planet is due for official first contact in approximately 73 of your Earth years. Huh, Jack wasn't sure how to feel about that, so I just saved us from premature alien discovery. Cool, still want my 20 grand though. The Emperor made a gesture, and a small floating orb appeared beside him. It opened like a flower, revealing the crystal that Vex'lor had shown Jack earlier, now glowing with intense inner light. This contains energy valued at approximately 50 million of your Earth dollars, the Emperor said casually. It can be easily converted to your primitive currency, or used directly to power any technology you possess for decades. Jack whistled low. That's a significant upgrade from our agreed price. Consider it appropriate compensation for averting an interstellar diplomatic crisis. The Emperor plucked the crystal from the floating orb and held it out to Jack. But I would discuss another matter before you depart. Jack took the crystal, trying not to look too eager as he pocketed it. I'm listening. The Emperor's four hands clasped together in a complex pattern. Your species has been categorized as creatively aggressive but technologically straightforward. Today's events suggest this assessment is flawed. You repaired quantum technology with adhesive strips and lubricant spray, duct tape and WD-40, Jack corrected automatically. Indeed, the Emperor's ridged brow furrowed. My xenoanthropologists have long theorized that humanity's true evolutionary advantage is not your intelligence, but your violently effective improvisation. Today has proven this theory correct.
Jack wasn't entirely sure if he'd just been complimented or insulted. Thanks, I think. It was not a compliment, merely an observation, the Emperor said, confirming Jack's suspicion. Your species takes primitive tools and materials and applies them to problems far beyond their designed purpose, often with inexplicable success. It is disturbing and potentially valuable. Jack raised an eyebrow. Where exactly is this going? The Emperor's robes brightened as he raised all four arms in a grand gesture. I propose an exchange. In addition to your payment, I offer knowledge, specifically, the basic principles of faster-than-light communication. In return, I would have samples of your duct tape and other repair implements for study, and perhaps occasional consultation on particularly vexing mechanical issues. Jack blinked. You want me to be your mechanic, and in exchange, you'll give me the secrets of faster-than-light communication. Precisely, the Emperor smiled, revealing teeth that seemed to be made of something like mother of pearl. A mutually beneficial arrangement. Jack thought about it for approximately 2 seconds. Throw in the principles of your anti-gravity tech, and you've got a deal. Plib made a strangled noise. Your luminous magnificence, the Treaty of Galactic Non-Interference strictly prohibits. The treaty addresses official planetary contact. The Emperor interrupted smoothly. This is merely a private arrangement between myself and an individual Earth mechanic. The distinction is legally significant. Jack grinned. He recognized a fellow loophole finder when he met one. So, do we have a deal? The Emperor extended one of his 6-fingered hands. We have a deal, human Jack Turner. May your adhesive solutions continue to defy logical explanation. As they shook hands, Jack couldn't help but think this was definitely not how he'd expected his Thursday to end. Jack stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as the Emperor's ship hummed with renewed vigor, its purple hull gleaming in the late afternoon sunlight. The duct tape patch was barely visible from the outside, which Jack considered a mark of professional pride. Nobody likes to see the repairs if they don't have to. Your vehicle should make it back to wherever you parked the mothership, Jack said, wiping his hands on a rag, but I wouldn't push it past 50% of whatever your top speed is. That patch job is good, but it's not meant for interstellar drag racing. The Emperor, who had exited the ship to bid Jack farewell, nodded solemnly. Your wisdom is noted, human Jack Turner. My joyrides shall be conducted with appropriate restraint, henceforth. Sure they will, Jack muttered, not believing it for a second. Rich clients always promised to take better care of their vehicles. They never did. Vex'lor approached, carrying what appeared to be a small crystal tablet. As promised, I have prepared information packets on both faster-than-light communication principles and anti-gravitational field generation. He handed the tablet to Jack. I've translated the concepts into your Earth physics terminology as best I could, though some of the quantum principles may require creative interpretation. Jack examined the tablet, which displayed diagrams and equations that made his high school physics look like finger painting. This is comprehensive. Indeed, Vex'lor agreed, though I should warn you, implementing these technologies with your current industrial capabilities would be challenging. Your planet lacks certain elements that exist only in stellar nurseries.
Elements that exist only in stellar nurseries, Jack repeated slowly. You mean like baby stars? Precisely. Vex'lor seemed pleased by Jack's understanding. The gravitational compression and exotic radiation create atomic structures that cannot form under normal cosmic conditions. Jack nodded thoughtfully. So I've got the blueprint for a Ferrari but no way to manufacture the engine parts. Still, the principles should be worth something to the right people. Potentially worth planetary dominance, the Emperor commented casually, examining his many ringed fingers. Though I assume your ethical frameworks would prevent such exploitation. Right, ethics. Absolutely, Jack said quickly, trying to look like someone with robust ethical frameworks. He carefully tucked the crystal tablet into his jacket's inner pocket. So is that everything? Ship fixed, payment exchanged, potential world-changing technology transfer. The Emperor raised one hand palm outward. There is one final matter, the question of my vessel's true nature. You mean the fact that I just fixed a spaceship belonging to the Emperor of 17 Galaxies using hardware store supplies? Jack shrugged. Who'd believe me? Besides, I signed an NDA once for a celebrity whose Ferrari I fixed after he crashed it into a swimming pool. I know how discretion works. I fear you misunderstand, the Emperor said, his voice taking on a grave tone. The vessel you repaired is not merely a spaceship. It is the quantum chariot of celestial authority, the physical embodiment of my divine right to rule the 17 Concordant Galaxies. Jack blinked. Come again. Plib, who had been hovering nervously nearby, stepped forward. What his luminous magnificence means is that the ship is not merely a mode of transportation. It is a sacred artifact, crafted by the First Empire 5 million years ago, passed down through 97 emperors, and imbued with the quantum essence of sovereignty itself. So it's not just a fancy space car, Jack said slowly. It's like what? The alien equivalent of the Holy Grail? A crude but not entirely inaccurate comparison, the Emperor acknowledged. The quantum chariot houses multidimensional relics that legitimize my rule. Its failure would have been interpreted as a sign of cosmic disfavor, potentially triggering rebellions across multiple galaxies. Jack stared at the ship, suddenly seeing his duct tape repair in a whole new light. So I didn't just fix your joyride vehicle, I literally saved your empire with WD-40 and electrical tape. Precisely. The Emperor's natural crown flared with apparent pleasure. Precisely. The Emperor's natural crown flared with apparent pleasure. Precisely. Which is why your compensation includes not only the energy crystal and technological knowledge, but also this. He removed one of the glowing rings from his six-fingered hand and presented it to Jack. The ring shimmered with an inner light that seemed to shift between colors that Jack had no names for. This is the signet of auxiliary consultation, the Emperor explained. It marks you as an official technical advisor to the imperial throne. Should you place it upon your finger and speak my name 3 times, a quantum entanglement signal will be sent, allowing me to contact you if mechanical emergencies arise. Jack took the ring cautiously. So it's like a cosmic beeper. Indeed, though it also grants you certain privileges should you ever find yourself in territories governed by the 17 Concordant Galaxies. The Emperor smiled his pearly smile, which given your planet's current technological limitations, seems unlikely in your lifetime. Unless someone gives me a lift, Jack suggested, raising an eyebrow. The Emperor chuckled. Perhaps. For special consultations only, of course. Jack slipped the ring onto his finger, expecting it to be too large or oddly shaped for a human hand. To his surprise, it resized itself perfectly, the alien metal warm against his skin. Neat trick, he murmured, admiring how the light played across the ring's surface. The signet adapts to its bearer, Vex'lor explained. It is semi-sentient, attuned to your biological signature. It is semi-sentient, attuned to your biological signatures. Semi-sentient jewelry, Jack nodded, as if this were a perfectly normal thing to own. Got it. Does it need feeding or walking? Plib made that strange sound again, the one that might have been laughter. It derives energy from ambient quantum fluctuations. No maintenance required. Finally, something that doesn't need regular oil changes. Jack grinned. Then a thought occurred to him.
Wait.
If this ship is so important, why did you risk taking it for a joyride to Earth in the first place? Seems like a big gamble for the embodiment of your divine right to rule. The Emperor's expression shifted, becoming almost sheepish, an odd look on his regal alien features. The quantum chariot has been used solely for ceremonial purposes for over 10,000 years. None have dared to test its operational capabilities. I merely wished to, how do you humans say it, take it for a spin. You wanted to see what this baby could really do. Jack translated, grinning wider. See if the ancient sacred relic could still burn rubber. A poetic way of putting it, the Emperor agreed. Unfortunately, the ancient systems were not designed for the maneuvers I attempted. Jack laughed, a genuine belly laugh that echoed through the clearing. So the great Galactic Emperor crashed his sacred ceremonial spaceship doing cosmic donuts. That's the most relatable thing I've heard all day. Even Plib seemed amused now. His luminous magnificence has always had a certain, adventurous streak. A trait that has served the Empire well in diplomatic matters, the Emperor said with dignity, though Jack could swear he saw the alien's ridged cheeks darken with what might have been a blush. Well, your luminousness, Jack said, shouldering his toolbox, it's been interesting. If you ever need another emergency repair, you know how to reach me. Just try not to need me at 3 in the morning, all right? I value my sleep. The Emperor inclined his head in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. Until we meet again, human Jack Turner. Your ingenuity has been educational. As Jack walked back to his tow truck, he heard the ship's engines power up behind him, a high-pitched whine that quickly faded beyond the range of human hearing. He turned to watch as the quantum chariot of celestial authority,
patched with duct tape and lubricated with WD-40, rose smoothly into the air, its purple hull shimmering until it seemed to fold in on itself and vanish with a soft pop of displaced air. Jack stood there for a long moment, the main forest quiet around him, except for the distant call of a crow. He looked down at the alien ring on his finger, the energy crystal in his pocket, and the tablet of impossible technology tucked inside his jacket. Well, he said to no one in particular, that's definitely going to be tough to explain on my tax return. 3 months after his encounter with the Emperor of the 17 Concordant Galaxies, Jack Turner's life had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The most obvious change was his garage. What had once been a run-down building with a leaking roof and outdated equipment was now a state-of-the-art facility. The energy crystal had indeed converted easily to Earth currency, though Jack had been careful to sell it in small fragments through various channels, to avoid awkward questions about where a small-town mechanic had acquired a gemstone worth millions. The new Turner Advanced Automotive featured hydraulic lifts, computerized diagnostic systems, and a coffee machine that cost more than Jack's first car. He'd hired 2 assistants, both promising mechanics from the local community college, and had even splurged on a new tow truck with actual functioning suspension. What hadn't changed was Jack himself. He still wore the same oil-stained coveralls, still cursed creatively when parts didn't fit, and still kept a roll of duct tape within arm's reach at all times. The alien ring remained on his finger, though most people assumed it was just an unusual piece of costume jewelry. On a crisp autumn morning, Jack was elbow-deep in the engine of Mrs. Henderson's Buick, which continued its stubborn refusal to die with dignity, when he heard the distinctive sound of tires on gravel. He looked up to see a sleek black SUV, with government plates pulling into his lot. "Huh," he muttered to the Buick. "That's probably not good." Jack wiped his hands on a rag and walked out to meet his visitors. 2 people emerged from the SUV, a woman in a sharp pantsuit and a man with the unmistakable physique of someone who bench-pressed filing cabinets for fun. "Jack Turner?" the woman asked, flashing a badge too quickly for Jack to read. "I'm Agent Ramirez. This is Agent Conway. We'd like to ask you a few questions."
Jack leaned against the garage doorframe, aiming for casual. "What can I help the government with today?" "We're with the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program," Agent Ramirez said, her expression carefully neutral. "We've been tracking some unusual readings in this area a few months back. Wondered if you might have seen anything out of the ordinary." Jack thought about the Emperor's ship folding in on itself and disappearing. "Can't say that I have. Pretty ordinary around here. Fix cars, drink beer, watch the Patriots lose. That's about the extent of the excitement." Agent Conway, who hadn't spoken yet, surveyed the garage with narrowed eyes. "That's some pretty advanced equipment for a small-town operation." Jack shrugged. "Got lucky with some investments. Bitcoin and all that." "Bitcoin," Agent Ramirez repeated, clearly skeptical. "Right, and I suppose that explains this too." She held up a tablet, displaying what appeared to be energy readings. "We detected quantum fluctuations consistent with theoretical FTL technology, centered right here, on this property." "Quantum what now?" Jack furrowed his brow, channeling every confused customer who'd ever asked him what a timing belt was. "Look, I barely passed high school physics. If you're picking up weird readings, maybe check with the power company. They installed some new smart grid thing last year." Before the agents could respond, there was a high-pitched whine from Jack's office, a sound just at the edge of human hearing. Jack recognized it immediately, the same sound the Emperor's ship had made before the coolant housing cracked. "What was that?" Agent Conway demanded, his hand moving toward what was undoubtedly a concealed weapon. "My microwave," Jack improvised. "It's been acting up. Actually, while you're here, any chance you guys know how to fix a GE microwave? Government must have some special manuals, right?" Agent Ramirez stared at him for a long moment. "Mr. Turner, if we discover you're withholding information about potential extraterrestrial technology." She was interrupted by the sound of Jack's phone ringing. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and felt a moment of relief at the perfect timing. "Sorry, gotta take this. Important customer. Feel free to look around, but maybe don't touch Mrs. Henderson's Buick. She's very particular." He stepped away, answering the phone with deliberate casualness. The agents exchanged glances but didn't stop him. "Turner's Auto," Jack said into the phone, watching the agents from the corner of his eye. "Greetings, human Jack Turner," came Vex'lor's unmistakable voice, louder than necessary. "I am calling on your primitive communication device as practiced.
Is this an acceptable time for discussion of non-terrestrial mechanical matters? Jack winced. Hey Bill, he said pointedly. No, now's not a great time. Got some folks from the government here, asking about weird energy readings. There was a pause on the other end. Ah, you are employing the Earth concept of playing it cool. Most wise. I shall adjust my communication accordingly. Yeah, exactly, Jack said, relief evident in his voice. So what's up with your Toyota? Oh, yes, my Earth vehicle called Toyota. Vex'lor's attempt at normal conversation was painfully obvious. I am experiencing difficulties with its what is your word? Catalytic converter. Yes, the Emperor, I mean my ordinary human employer, is most displeased. Jack rubbed his temple. Look, Bill, how about you bring it by tomorrow? I've got a full schedule today. Most acceptable. I shall arrive at your establishment at the designated time. Also, the Emperor wishes to know if you have considered his offer of interstellar travel for consultation purposes. The royal barge requires what you might call a tune-up. Jack noticed the agents were now openly staring at him. Yeah, I'll have those parts you ordered by next week. Gotta go now. Bye. He hung up quickly and turned to the agents with what he hoped was an innocent smile. Customers, right, always in a rush. Agent Ramirez took a step closer. Who was that? Mr. Turner. Just a regular with a Toyota. Foreign guy, still getting the hang of English. Likes to joke around. Jack gestured toward Mrs. Henderson's Buick. Now if you don't mind, I've got work to finish. Unless you've got a warrant or something. The agents exchanged another look. Finally, Agent Ramirez handed him a business card. If you notice anything unusual, Mr. Turner, we expect a call, immediately. Will do, Jack promised, pocketing the card with no intention of ever using it. After the agents left, Jack locked the garage door and went straight to his office. The high-pitched whine was coming from the bottom drawer of his desk. He opened it to find the signet of auxiliary consultation glowing brightly. Great timing, your luminousness, Jack muttered, slipping the ring on. As instructed months ago, he spoke the Emperor's name 3 times. Zorn'thal, Zorn'thal, Zorn'thal. The air in front of his desk shimmered, and a small holographic image of the Emperor appeared, floating a few inches above Jack's cluttered paperwork. Human Jack Turner. The Emperor's tiny projection boomed. I trust my timing is not inconvenient. Oh, just nearly got me arrested by whatever Earth's version of the Men in Black is, Jack said dryly. No big deal. Excellent. The Emperor either missed or ignored the sarcasm. I have a proposition. The royal technocrats have analyzed your duct tape and WD-40 and found them fascinating but insufficient for our needs. We require further consultation on human mechanical improvisation techniques. Jack leaned back in his chair. And what's in it for me this time? The Emperor's holographic form made a grand gesture. 2-week journey aboard the Imperial flagship. You will advise our engineering corps on implementing human-style redundancy systems, enjoy the hospitality of 17 galaxies, and return with knowledge and materials beyond your planet's current scientific understanding. Jack thought about the government agents, about his newly renovated garage, about Mrs. Henderson's immortal Buick. Then he thought about traveling through space, on an alien ship that probably needed a good mechanic. When do we leave? He asked. Most excellent. The Emperor clapped 2 of his 4 hands together. Vex'lor will arrive tomorrow in a properly disguised shuttle. Pack lightly, but bring ample supplies of your miraculous adhesive strips. After the hologram faded, Jack sat in silence for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. 3 months ago, he'd been a small-town mechanic with a leaky roof and an overdrawn bank account. Now he was about to become the first human to travel beyond the solar system, all because he knew how to use duct tape. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a fresh roll. Better stock up, he told the empty office. Something tells me the galaxy isn't ready for good old-fashioned human ingenuity. As if in agreement, Mrs. Henderson's Buick backfired loudly in the garage. Some things change, some things never do, and sometimes, the most ordinary skills turn out to be the most extraordinary advantages in a vast, complex universe. Jack Turner, small-town mechanic and official technical advisor to the Emperor of the 17 Concordant Galaxies, tucked the duct tape into his pocket and went back to work. Tomorrow would bring interstellar adventure, but today there was still a Buick that needed fixing. After all, he had a reputation to maintain.